My name is Bernice, and I am 58 years old. For 12 years of my life, I lived and worked in China. Mandarin Chinese became my second language, as natural to me as breathing. When my son brought home a beautiful young woman he wanted to marry, I thought our family was about to welcome the perfect daughter-in-law. She smiled so sweetly, she spoke so kindly, until that dinner when she said things she never expected me to understand. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Have you ever heard someone insult you right to your face thinking you could not understand? Stay with me. I was born in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your grandmother's name too. My parents were simple, hardworking people. My father worked at the local factory for 35 years. My mother was a homemaker who made the best apple pie in the county. We did not have much, but we had love. We had respect. Those were the values I carried with me when I left home at 22 years old, fresh out of college, with a degree in international relations and a dream bigger than our little town could hold. The year was 1989 when I received the letter that changed my life. The United States Department of State had accepted my application. My first assignment would be at the American Embassy in Beijing, China. I remember my mother crying at the airport, pressing a small cross into my palm. She told me to stay safe. She told me to come home. I promised I would, but I had no idea that China would become my second home in ways I never imagined. When I first arrived in Beijing, I did not know a single word of Chinese. Not one. The language sounded like music to me, beautiful and completely incomprehensible. I was assigned to work in the Cultural Affairs Department, but I quickly realized that without the language, I would always be an outsider looking in. So I made a decision that would shape the rest of my life. I would learn Mandarin Chinese no matter how long it took. Those first few years were brutal. Every night after work, I sat with a tutor for 3 hours. An elderly professor named Mr. Liu had the patience of a saint as I butchered tones and mispronounced characters. During lunch breaks, I would walk to the local market and practice with the vendors. They laughed at my mistakes, but they also encouraged me. They corrected me. They taught me phrases that no textbook ever would. After 3 years, I could read the newspaper. After 5 years, I could negotiate contracts entirely in Mandarin. By the time I left China in 2001, after 12 years of service, I spoke Chinese like a native. Not just the standard Mandarin they teach in schools, but the Beijing dialect, with all its colorful expressions and subtle nuances. The language had become part of who I was. I met Gregory at a conference on Asian studies when I was 30 years old. He was a professor of East Asian history at Georgetown University, tall with kind eyes and a laugh that filled the room. He had spent time in China too, researching ancient dynasties and learning the language along the way. We bonded over our shared love for Chinese culture, for the poetry and the philosophy and the food. Within 2 years, we were married. Within 3, we had our son Nathan. Nathan grew up hearing Chinese in our home. Gregory and I would often switch between English and Mandarin, especially when we did not want Nathan to understand something as a child. But as he grew older, Nathan showed little interest in learning the language himself. He was fascinated by computers and technology, not ancient characters and tonal pronunciations. I did not push him. Every child has their own path, and I respected his choices. Our family was happy. Gregory taught at the university. I continued working for the State Department in various capacities until my retirement 5 years ago. Nathan grew into a kind, intelligent young man. He graduated from MIT with honors, landed a job at a major tech company, and moved to California. We were proud parents. We had done our best, and our son had exceeded every expectation. 18 months ago, Nathan called with news that made my heart sing. He was dating someone. Her name was Lily Huang. She was Chinese-American, born and raised in San Francisco. She worked in finance, had a graduate degree, and according to Nathan, she was the most wonderful woman he had ever met. I could hear the joy in his voice, the kind of joy that only comes when you find someone who makes your world brighter. I was thrilled. Selfishly, perhaps I imagined being able to speak Chinese with my future daughter-in-law. I pictured us cooking together, sharing recipes, maybe even teaching my future grandchildren the language I loved so much. When Nathan arranged for us to meet Lily through a video call, I prepared myself to make a good impression. She appeared on the screen like a porcelain doll. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, a smile that seemed almost too bright. She greeted Gregory and me with impeccable politeness, asking about our health, complimenting our home. I tested the waters by saying a few words in Chinese. She responded with a simple phrase or two, then quickly switched back to English. "I understand," she said with a light laugh. "I grew up here in America, so my Chinese is not very good. I really only speak it with my parents." I accepted her explanation without question. Many second-generation Chinese Americans preferred English. It was nothing unusual. What mattered was that Nathan was happy. What mattered was that this young woman seemed to adore my son. I pushed aside the tiny voice in my head that wondered why her smile never quite reached her eyes. 8 months ago, Nathan brought Lily home to meet us in person. It was a Saturday afternoon in early spring. The cherry blossoms were blooming, and I had spent the entire morning cooking Nathan's favorite dishes. I wanted everything to be perfect. Lily arrived carrying an expensive bottle of wine and a bouquet of white roses. She was even more beautiful in person, slender and graceful, with long black hair and features that belonged on a magazine cover. Her manners were flawless. She complimented the flowers in our garden. She praised the artwork on our walls. She asked thoughtful questions about my career in diplomacy. The dinner went smoothly on the surface. Lily spoke about her work in investment banking. She talked about her family's import-export business. She mentioned that her parents were very successful, that they had high expectations for their only daughter. Everything she said was appropriate. Everything was polished. Yet something felt off, like watching a performance rather than having a conversation. After dinner, Gregory and I sat in the kitchen cleaning up while Nathan showed Lily around the house. Gregory dried a plate slowly, his brow furrowed. "She is very polished," he said quietly, "almost too polished. Like she is acting in a play." I told him he was being too critical. Young people today were different. They were used to presenting themselves a certain way. It did not mean anything sinister. "Maybe you are right," Gregory said. "But watch her eyes, Bernice. They do not match her smile." I dismissed his concern. Fathers were always protective of their sons. Gregory was seeing problems where there were none. Lily was lovely. Nathan was happy. That was enough. A month later, Lily came to visit while Nathan was stuck at work with a deadline. She said she wanted to spend time with me to build our relationship before the engagement that everyone knew was coming. I was touched by the gesture. We sat in the living room drinking tea, talking about wedding colors and honeymoon destinations. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and said something apologetic in English before answering. I heard her say "mama" in Chinese, and then she began speaking rapidly in her native tongue. She had moved to the far side of the room near the window, clearly assuming I could not hear or understand, but I heard everything. "Their house is nothing special," Mama Lily said in Mandarin. "Very ordinary. Not wealthy at all. But Nathan makes good money, so it does not matter." Her mother's voice crackled through the phone, asking something I could not quite catch. "The mother-in-law looks plain," Lily continued. "She dresses like a countrywoman. But I can tolerate it. I do not have to see her often after we get married." My hand froze on my teacup. My heart began to pound. I sat completely still, afraid that any movement would betray what I was hearing. Lily laughed at something her mother said, agreed to call later, and ended the conversation. When she turned back to me, her smile was as radiant as ever. "Sorry about that," she said sweetly. "My mother just wanted to check in." I nodded and smiled back. I told her it was no problem. Inside, I was shattered. That night I told Gregory everything. He wanted to confront Nathan immediately, to expose Lily for what she really was. But I stopped him. I needed to be certain. One phone call could be explained away. Maybe she was just venting to her mother. maybe she did not really mean those things. I decided to watch and wait. I decided to gather more evidence before I risked destroying my son's happiness. From that moment on, I paid attention to every word Lily said in both languages. I watched her eyes when she smiled. I listened to her tone when she thought no one important was paying attention. The mask she wore so perfectly began to show its cracks. 4 months before everything fell apart, Nathan and Lily held their engagement party at an upscale restaurant in the city. It was our first time meeting Lily's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Huang. They arrived in a Mercedes, dressed in designer clothes, dripping with jewelry and self-importance. Mrs. Huang greeted us with a thin smile that did not reach her eyes. She looked at my simple dress, at Gregory's modest watch, and I could see her making calculations in her head. Her husband, Mr. Huang, was quieter. He shook our hands firmly and said little, but his eyes moved constantly, observing everything and everyone. The dinner was elaborate. Expensive champagne, a 7-course meal, Mrs. Huang dominated the conversation, talking about their vacation home in Hawaii, their connections in high society, their expectations for Lily's future. I listened politely. Gregory engaged when necessary. Nathan seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, simply happy to have both families together. Midway through the meal, Lily leaned close to her mother and began speaking in rapid Chinese. They thought they were being discreet. They thought the old couple from Ohio could not possibly understand. "Look at what the mother is wearing," Mrs. Huang said in Mandarin. "It looks like something from a thrift store. Does she not own anything decent?" Lily giggled softly. "I know, right? She has no sense of style at all. But what can you expect from people like them?" "At least Nathan turned out well," Mrs. Huang replied. "He must have gotten his intelligence from somewhere else." They laughed together, 2 women sharing a private joke at my expense. I felt Gregory's hand find mine under the table. He squeezed gently. He knew something was wrong even if he could not understand the words. I said nothing. I smiled when spoken to in English. I complimented the food. I played the role of the clueless mother-in-law they believed me to be. But inside, a fire was building. Inside, I was documenting every insult, every sneer, every moment of contempt, hidden behind polite smiles. A month later, Lily invited me to go shopping with her. She said she wanted my opinion on wedding dresses. She said she wanted us to bond as mother and daughter. I agreed, curious to see how far she would go when she thought we were alone. We walked through the mall, stopping at various stores. Lily tried on dresses that cost more than my first car. She asked my opinion, then ignored whatever I said. Her phone rang while she was in the fitting room, and she answered it without closing the curtain all the way. The conversation was in Chinese with someone she called her best friend. "I am out with the mother-in-law right now," Lily said, her voice dripping with disdain. "So boring. She follows me around like a lost puppy. She actually thinks her opinion matters." Her friend said something on the other end. Lily laughed. "The old woman is clueless. She probably thinks she is important because she used to work at some embassy, but she is just old now. Her brain is probably going slow. She does not understand anything." I stood outside the fitting room, hearing every word. My face remained neutral. My heart was breaking. This was the woman my son wanted to marry. This was the woman who smiled at me over dinner and called me stupid behind my back. When Lily emerged, she was all sweetness again. She held up a white gown and asked if I thought it was the one. I told her it was beautiful. I told her Nathan would love it. I played my part perfectly. 2 weeks before the dinner that changed everything, Marcus came to visit. Marcus had been Nathan's best friend since their freshman year at MIT. He was like a second son to Gregory and me. We had watched him grow from a shy 18-year-old into a confident young man. He always called us on holidays. He always remembered our birthdays. That afternoon, Nathan and Lily went out to run errands. Marcus stayed behind, saying he wanted to help Gregory with a project in the garage. But when Lily's car disappeared down the street, Marcus found me in the kitchen. "Mrs. Bernice," he said, his voice serious, "there is something I need to tell you. I have been going back and forth about this for months. I do not want to hurt Nathan, but I cannot stay silent anymore. My hands stilled over the vegetables I was chopping. I told Marcus to sit down. I told him to tell me everything. He took a deep breath and began. A few months ago, he had attended a company party where Lily was also present. They worked in different departments of the same firm. At one point, Marcus overheard Lily talking with her colleagues near the bar. She was bragging, Marcus said. She told them Nathan was easy to control. She said he was naive and trusting. She laughed about how she would manage all their finances after the wedding. She said she would make sure Nathan did not send money to his parents anymore. She called you and Mr. Gregory a burden. I set down the knife. My hands were shaking. I am so sorry, Marcus continued. I did not know how to tell Nathan. He is so in love with her. He will not believe me, but I thought you should know. You deserve to know. I thanked Marcus. I told him he did the right thing. I promised I would handle it carefully. After he left, I went to my bedroom and cried. I cried for my son, who was about to have his heart broken. I cried for the future I had imagined that would never come to be. I cried because the woman wearing my grandmother's engagement ring thought of me as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. The dinner was scheduled for a Thursday evening. Both families would meet at a high-end Chinese restaurant to discuss wedding plans. The venue had been chosen by the Huangs, a place where they were regular customers, where the staff knew them by name. It was their territory, and they wanted us to know it. I dressed carefully that night, a simple navy blue dress, pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother, minimal makeup. I knew what Lily and her mother would think when they saw me. I knew they would whisper about my lack of sophistication. I did not care. I was not dressing to impress them anymore. Gregory drove us to the restaurant. He kept glancing at me, concern in his eyes. "Are you sure you are okay?" he asked. "We do not have to do this tonight." I patted his hand on the steering wheel. I told him I was fine. I told him that whatever happened, we would face it together. What I did not tell him was that I had a feeling this night would be different. I had a feeling that the truth buried for so long was about to surface. The Huangs were already seated when we arrived. Mrs. Huang wore a red silk dress and diamonds that sparkled under the chandelier. Lily sat beside her mother, equally glamorous, her smile as bright and false as ever. Mr. Huang stood to greet us, his handshake firm, his expression unreadable. Nathan pulled out my chair like the gentleman I had raised him to be. He looked happy, excited to have everyone together. My heart ached, knowing what was coming. The meal began with small talk and appetizers. Mrs. Huang talked about florists and photographers. Lily discussed bridesmaid dresses. I nodded along, contributed when asked, played my role flawlessly. Gregory caught my eye across the table. He knew I was waiting for something. He just did not know what. It happened during the main course. Lily leaned toward her mother, chopsticks in hand, and began speaking in Chinese. Her voice was low, but not low enough. Her confidence that no one at our end of the table could understand made her careless. "Look at her dress," Lily said to Mrs. Huang. "She looks like a maid who wandered into the wrong party." Mrs. Huang smirked. "What do you expect from people like them? No class, no taste." Lily glanced at me, then turned back to her mother. "The old pig does not understand anything we say. Look at her face, so stupid, just sitting there smiling like nothing is wrong." Mrs. Huang nodded. "She is too dumb to realize we are talking about her, like a fat old pig waiting for dinner." Lily laughed, covering her mouth delicately. "You are so right, Mama. A stupid old pig who does not know anything." The words hung in the air, invisible to everyone except me. I felt them settle on my skin, like acid. I felt them burn through the years of insults I had collected and catalogued. Nathan asked them what was funny. Lily replied in English that they were just complimenting the wonderful dumplings. Something inside me shifted. The rage that I had kept so carefully controlled began to rise, but it was not a hot, explosive anger. It was cold. It was calculated. It was the anger of a woman who had spent decades negotiating with diplomats and politicians who knew that the best response was not always the loudest one. I set down my chopsticks carefully. I took a sip of tea. Then I looked directly at Lily and spoke. My Mandarin was flawless. My accent was pure Beijing. Every word was clear as crystal. I said, "This old pig understands every single word you have said, tonight and every other time. Perhaps the daughter should learn to respect her elders before she thinks about becoming someone's wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Lily's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mrs. Huang looked like she had been slapped. Even Mr. Huang, usually so composed, stared at me with wide eyes. Nathan jumped to his feet. "Mom," he said, his voice confused. "What did you just say?" "You speak Chinese." I kept my eyes on Lily. I told my son that I had lived in China for 12 years. I told him that Chinese was my second language. I told him that I had understood every insult, every cruel word, every moment of disrespect that his fiancée and her mother had directed at me. "That is not true," Lily stammered. "She is lying. I never said those things." I turned to my son. I repeated every word they had said, translating it into English so there could be no misunderstanding. Thrift store clothes, countrywoman, stupid old pig. I watched Nathan's face transform as the truth sank in. "Is this true?" Nathan demanded, looking at Lily. "Did you say those things about my mother?" Lily began to cry. She said I misunderstood. She said it was just a joke. She said her mother had put her up to it. The excuses tumbled out one after another, none of them taking responsibility. Mrs. Huang stood abruptly. She told her husband they were leaving. She grabbed her purse and walked toward the exit, without looking back. Mr. Huang paused, looked at me for a long moment, then followed his wife. Lily sat, frozen tears streaming down her face, her perfect makeup ruined. Gregory took my hand. Nathan stood between us and Lily, his expression torn between anger and heartbreak. The beautiful dinner, the elegant restaurant, the carefully planned evening, all of it lay in ruins around us. I had not planned to expose Lily that night. I had not planned to say anything at all. But there are moments when silence becomes complicity. There are moments when the only honorable choice is to speak the truth, no matter the cost. The aftermath of that dinner unfolded like a slow-motion disaster. Nathan drove us home in complete silence. Lily had left separately, sobbing in her car, her parents already gone. When we arrived at our house, Nathan sat in the driveway for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Gregory went inside to give us privacy. I stayed in the car with my son. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" Nathan finally asked. His voice was hollow. I told him I wanted to be certain. I told him I did not want to destroy his happiness based on something I might have misheard. I told him that I had hoped foolishly, perhaps, that I was wrong about Lily. Nathan shook his head. "All those times you were smiling at her. All those times you were being so nice. And she was saying those things about you." I reached over and took his hand. I told him that what mattered now was what he chose to do next. I told him that I would support whatever decision he made, even if that decision was to stay with Lily. He looked at me, then his eyes red. How could I stay with someone who thinks of my mother as a stupid old pig? I had no answer for that. Some wounds cannot be healed with words. In the days that followed, Lily bombarded Nathan with messages and calls. She apologized endlessly. She blamed her mother for influencing her. She promised to change. She begged for another chance. She even called me directly. I picked up the phone, curious to hear what she would say. Her voice was desperate, stripped of all its former sweetness. "I am so sorry," she said. "I never meant those things. My mother has always been that way, and I just went along with it. I know it was wrong. Please, can we start over?" I listened until she finished. Then I told her that I did not have the power to forgive her on behalf of my son. That was his decision. But I also told her that words reveal what is in the heart. I told her that someone who truly loves another person does not mock their family in secret. I told her that respect is not something you turn on and off depending on who is listening. She cried. She pleaded. I remained calm. Finally, I said something that silenced her completely. I told her that I hoped she would learn from this. I told her that the way she treated me was a reflection of who she was, not who I was. And I told her that Nathan deserved someone who would love his entire family, not just the parts that were convenient. She hung up without saying goodbye. Nathan came to dinner a week later. He looked exhausted, older somehow, like the past few days had aged him years. He sat at our kitchen table, the same table where he had eaten breakfast as a child, and told us his decision. I ended the engagement, he said. I could not do it. Every time I looked at her, I heard those words. I could not imagine building a life with someone who could say those things about my mother. Gregory put his hand on Nathan's shoulder. I felt tears prick my eyes. I told Nathan I was sorry. I told him I wish things could have been different. I told him that his happiness was all I had ever wanted. He looked at me with something like wonder in his eyes. You understood everything they said, and you still treated her with kindness. You still gave her chances. How did you do that? I told him the truth. I told him that kindness is not weakness. I told him that I had hoped Lily would prove me wrong. I told him that giving people the opportunity to show their true colors is sometimes the only way to see them clearly. We sat together that night, the three of us eating leftovers and talking about memories from Nathan's childhood. We did not mention Lily again. Some chapters once closed do not need to be revisited. The months after the broken engagement were hard for Nathan. He threw himself into his work, staying late at the office, avoiding social gatherings. Gregory and I worried about him, but we knew better than to push. Healing takes its own time. 2 weeks after the dinner, Nathan asked if he could come stay with us for a while. He needed to get out of California, away from the places that reminded him of Lily. Of course we said yes. Of course we welcomed him home. Those first days were quiet. Nathan spent hours in his old room, sometimes working on his laptop, sometimes just staring out the window. I did not intrude. I simply made sure there was always good food on the table and clean sheets on his bed. Sometimes the best thing a mother can do is create a safe space for her child to fall apart. Gregory helped in his own way. He invited Nathan to go fishing at the lake, where they used to go when Nathan was a boy. They would leave early in the morning and come back in the afternoon, tired and sunburned, smelling like lake water and bait. Gregory told me later that Nathan barely spoke during those trips. But he did not need to. Just being together was enough. Slowly, Nathan began to emerge from his shell. He started joining us for meals instead of eating alone in his room. He asked about our days. He laughed at Gregory's terrible jokes. The light returned to his eyes, faint at first, then brighter with each passing week. One evening, as we were watching television together, Nathan turned to me. I keep thinking about something he said. You knew Chinese all along. You heard everything Lily and her mother said about you for months, and you never said anything. You never got angry. You never treated her badly. Why I muted the television? I thought about his question carefully before answering. I told him that anger is a fire that burns the person who holds it. I told him that responding to cruelty with cruelty only creates more pain. I told him that I had chosen to wait because I trusted that the truth would reveal itself. And it did. Not because I exposed it, but because Lily could not hide who she really was, forever. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised me. I want to be more like you, Mum. I want to be the kind of person who can face that kind of disrespect and still choose kindness. I felt tears gather in my eyes. I told him that he already was that kind of person. I told him that his willingness to walk away from someone he loved because she had disrespected his family showed more strength than he knew. We did not talk about Lily much after that. Nathan returned to California after 2 weeks, but he was different, more thoughtful, more at peace with what had happened. A surprising development came a month later. Mr. Huang called me. I almost did not answer when I saw the unfamiliar number, but something told me to pick up. His voice was calm, measured nothing like his wife's sharp tones. Mrs. Bernice, he said, I owe you an apology. I listened as he explained. He had known about his wife and daughter's behavior for years. He had never approved, but he had also never intervened. That night at the restaurant, seeing me respond with such composure and dignity had forced him to confront the ugliness in his own family. He told me that Lily and her mother were now seeing a therapist trying to understand why they treated people the way they did. He did not ask me to forgive them. He simply wanted me to know that consequences had followed their actions. I thanked him for calling. I told him that I held no grudge against him personally. I told him that I hoped his family would find healing. We parted on civil terms, two parents who had failed to prevent their children's pain, but were trying to pick up the pieces. 1 year has passed since that dinner at the Chinese restaurant. The season has come full circle, and spring is blooming again outside my window. So much has changed in 12 months. So much has healed. Nathan is thriving. 3 months after returning to California, he was offered a promotion that required him to relocate to Seattle. He took it without hesitation. A fresh start in a new city was exactly what he needed. We helped him move into his new apartment, a bright space with views of the mountains. During one of our video calls, Nathan mentioned that he had met someone. Her name was Sarah. She was a middle school teacher, originally from Oregon. They had met at a hiking group organized by his company. She is different, Mom, Nathan told me. She is genuine. What you see is what you get. I asked when we could meet her. Nathan smiled and said, "Soon." That soon turned into reality last month. Nathan brought Sarah home for a weekend visit. She arrived carrying a mason jar filled with wildflowers from her garden. Not expensive roses from a florist. Flowers she had grown and picked herself. Sarah was nothing like Lily. Where Lily was polished and performative, Sarah was warm and unguarded. She asked me genuine questions about my time in China. She listened with real interest. When Gregory talked about his research, she insisted on helping with the dishes after dinner, standing beside me at the sink, chatting about her students and their funny stories. At one point, Sarah mentioned that Nathan had told her everything about what happened with his previous engagement. She said she admired how I had handled the situation. She said she hoped she would never disappoint me the way Lily had. I told her that she had already shown me who she was, and I liked what I saw. When they left on Sunday evening, Nathan hugged me tighter than usual. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being patient, for not giving up on me." I told him that mothers never give up on their children, no matter what. Gregory and I have found new rhythms in our retirement. I started teaching Chinese at the local library free classes for anyone who wants to learn. Children's seniors, curious adults. They all sit together in the community room practicing tones and characters. The language that once revealed betrayal has become a bridge to connection. Gregory published another book about Asian history. He dedicated it to me, writing that I taught him the most important lesson about the region, that the true measure of a culture is not in its grand monuments or ancient texts, but in the way its people treat one another. My sister Dorothy flew in from Florida for a 2-week visit. We had grown apart over the years, busy with our separate lives and separate struggles. But sitting on my porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset, we found our way back to each other. She told me she was proud of how I had handled the situation with Lily. She said our mother would have done the same thing. I think about Lily sometimes, not with anger or bitterness. Those feelings faded long ago. I wonder if she ever truly understood what she lost. Not Nathan, though losing him was painful for her, but the chance to be part of a family that would have welcomed her completely if she had only been real. Through Mr. Huang, I learned that Lily remains unmarried. She is still in therapy, working on issues that apparently run deeper than anyone knew. I hope she finds peace. I hope she learns to value people for who they are, not for what they can provide. I hope that someday she discovers that respect given freely is worth more than respect demanded through manipulation. The lessons from this experience have stayed with me. I learned that patience is not passivity. Waiting for the right moment to speak is not the same as accepting disrespect. I learned that protecting your child sometimes means allowing them to see the truth for themselves. I learned that the words people speak when they think no one important is listening are the most honest words they will ever say. Most importantly, I learned that dignity cannot be taken away by someone else's cruelty. Lily called me a stupid old pig. Her mother mocked my clothes and my worth. But their words said everything about who they were and nothing about who I am. I am a woman who lived in a foreign country for 12 years and mastered its language. I am a wife who has shared 30 years with a good man. I am a mother who raised a son with integrity and kindness. No amount of whispered insults in any language can diminish that. If you are watching this and you have ever been mocked or belittled by someone who thought you could not understand, I want you to know that you are not alone. The world is full of people who hide their true selves behind polite masks. Your job is not to expose them. Your job is to remain true to who you are. The truth has a way of surfacing on its own. So let me ask you this. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was not who they pretended to be? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and speaking the truth? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like. It helps more people find these videos. If you want to hear more stories about real-life experiences and the lessons they teach, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, please share this video with them. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you all the wisdom to know when to speak, the patience to wait for the right moment, and the strength to always remember your own worth. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.